Hi, I'm Cameron, and I don't just read comics, I love them. On today's episode of Cameron Reads Comics, we are giving another friend their very first comic book. One of my oldest pals, Jack Ellinthorpe, read his first comic, Four Kids Walk Into a Bank, by Matthew Rosenberg and Tyler Boss. This story was a Black Mask Studios production, and it did not disappoint. Just a heads up, it was recorded over Zoom, so the sound quality may not be perfect. As always, there are full spoilers ahead for Four Kids Walk Into a Bank. Remember to go follow us on Instagram at Cameron Reads Comics, as well as our brand new Twitter page. And please, 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 leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. We also have a super special announcement at the end of this episode, so stay tuned. Now, here's your summary for Four Kids Walk Into a Bank. Four Kids Walk Into a Bank is a darkly comedic story of four burgeoning child criminals and their elaborate plans. When a group of bumbling criminals show up in her father's life looking to pull one last job, young Paige has two choices. Let her father get caught up in their original hijinks, or enlist her three best friends to do the job first. Paige picks the bad one. Hi, Jack. Welcome to the Cameron Reads Comics podcast. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I apologize that this was delayed. I got a little bit sick.
No, nobody knows
Um,
that. Nobody knows that. We are actually doing this recording differently than others. This is a Zoom recording, so we're glad to have you.
yeah, I appreciate that. It was my first comic book. I guess we'll get into it, but there were many surprises for me. Um, and yeah,
Jack, we've known each other forever, and you are one of the few people who's seen like my comic book journey go as long as it has because like you've just our time together as friends, and so you have a unique perspective that other people don't because we've known each other for so long. So first and foremost, I guess let's get in touch with your relationship with comics as it has been. So, what has been your relationship with comics and like fan fiction and like just fandom thus far?
okay. So my relationship with comic books, I would say 95% of it is Cameron really likes comic books, and that's about that.
It's true.
Um, but I guess on the flip side, I've never had the motivation, I guess, up until now to actually delve into it really whatsoever. However, there's guys obviously that I'm close with like you that were, so passionate about it. And then
Passion is
I,
the right word.
yeah. And then, I also lived in San Diego. So just from like almost like a business perspective, like Comic-Con, I know it's
Huge.
just this huge thing where I've heard, I remember Uber drivers telling me they make like 200 an hour, like everyone comes in. And so I know it is this kind of low key, gigantic world or industry, but I really didn't
Yeah.
know anything about it.
At this point, like I don't know if we could even consider it low key because when Avengers Endgame is the highest grossing film of all time, you know what I mean? And like we have so much uh, content, especially at this point in time, television shows and movies and even stuff that like you haven't even seen. It's like it's way bigger than we all quite like assign meaning to. You know, it's like it's bigger than we think because like I don't know if you ever watch Walking Dead or other things like that. Like that's based on a comic book. It's like that was a comic first, and then it was this huge show. So
Yeah.
it's seeping into all aspects.
No, I agree for sure. And also, I would say it's kind of once again, this is just from my perspective, but breaking down barriers in the sense of the traditional comic book stereotypes where growing up, and I'm not one to ever care about something like this,
Yeah,
but
you
there'd be
don't.
like, but there'd be like the cool kids don't read the comic books,
Oh
and it's like,
yeah,
oh, it's like a nerdy thing to do. And I've noticed, maybe just through you, but But you know, for example, you had that guy on, what is he, the lead singer of some like legit band or
Oh,
something?
Jared from the Dirty Heads.
Yeah, it's like, all right, that guy does not fall into the stereotypical, you know, like kid that
Yeah,
plays the trumpet after school. You know, it's like, you know, this is,
he
you
does
know,
it.
so, I mean, maybe actually it's a band, but
Different band, but also, hey, for the kids that played trumpet after school, we think you're cool. So
yeah, no hate.
you're so funny. Called out. But have you ever like considered yourself part of a fandom? And like for other people, when I ask this question, it's like it doesn't have to be comics or anything. Like, did you watch all the Harry Potters? Like, were you a big Game of Thrones fan? Like, was there
Yeah.
anything that you followed, like I guess religiously?
So, uh, so yeah. So I guess first and foremost, although it isn't that exciting of an answer, I'm a
It is.
diehard basketball fan, as you
Oh
know.
yeah. No, any quality
Um,
fandoms because the Boston Celtics fans are not welcome here. So.
okay, well, 17 championships. And then yeah, I'd watch Game of Thrones pretty religiously. That you know, I guess
Really?
I'd probably put that as the best TV show of all time in my book.
Dang.
Um,
Even with that ending, how'd you feel about the ending?
so the
No
hate that
spoilers
it
though. No spoilers
Okay,
though.
no spoilers. The hate that it got was a snowball where everyone was just like, yeah, it sucks. And then
Yeah.
everyone's like, yeah. But then if you take a step back, it's like your expectations were way too high.
Yeah.
It did get a little corny. The comparison I make to that is Star Wars when Disney bought it out, and you
Yeah.
watch that new
Yeah.
Star Wars, and it was essentially Disneyfied a little bit,
Yeah.
but it was still really good. So
Yeah.
I liked it.
People, I don't know, people will like build things up in their heads and they're just like, wow, I want this to be the thing that I need. You know what I mean? And I'm like, there's no way that this weight that so many people put on it can like, be satisfied, like be satiated because it is 14 million people want this to be one other thing more greater than it is, you know? And I'm like, oh, that's just an impossible standard for any kind of content or medium.
Yeah, and they're on the outer cusp of what's possible in the sense of the best TV ever in previous seasons. And so the expectation is for it to be better for that final season. You know, all the fans raised like millions of dollars to pour into like the funding of the filming of the show. But quite frankly, you know, my belief is that they were groundbreaking in what they did originally, and like TV, you know, it's really not possible to get that much better than it was, which I think is
Yeah.
why people were disappointed.
Yeah. It's, when you're breaking that many barriers, like you are gonna run out of steam. But like I don't know, like the legacy of that show, and like that show is not the ending. It's everything. It's all of it. It's everything before and after that too. So I feel like people forget that, and so I feel also like HBO has had struggles with ending their like really great franchises because if you listen to the fans of The Sopranos, they hate the ending because literally,
Yeah.
and here's a spoiler for a show that ended in like 2007, but like it cuts to black like in the middle of some big scene, and it's like well, you'll never know what happens, and it's like what? How could you do that? What happens next? And everyone gets mad. So it's not the
Yeah.
first time.
Which, by the way, kind of plays in a little bit to this book, which was mind blowing at
Yes,
the end
we're
itself.
gonna talk about the ending, but we're gonna talk about that towards the end. My next question for you is, well, you may have answered it, but like, was this the first comic like proper that you have ever read?
100% yes, unless you're counting like the newspaper comics on Sundays that are like $5.
Jack's a big Garfield fan. He's like, dang, I want some lasagna. Like,
Don't hate.
you're like, oh my gosh, Family Circus. What are those kids gonna do next? So then I guess after that, next real reasonable question is like, what did you think about it? Like, were you overwhelmed? Was it
Yeah.
what you thought it would be? Was it
So,
not?
so, so I'll take you through, I guess, my progression. Um, and we won't get into details, but my progression of my feelings on the book itself
Yeah,
was, so like page one, you know, it's like, um, I don't even know really why they did it. That was like one of my questions, but they're like playing the game, but they're
yeah,
playing like as the characters, you know? And then
uh-huh.
so my stereotypical like what I think about these comic books is like warlocks and orcs and dragons, and all this
Yeah.
stuff. And I'm thinking like, I got to go on this goddamn podcast, and like I cannot keep up with
Right,
this.
right,
Like,
right.
yeah, and I was like, what is going on? And then like
I was
2
like,
pages
oh, is
later,
he gonna get that? Like,
yeah, yeah. And so my first like page, like 1 through 3 or whatever, it was like I'd classify myself as scared, where I was like, wow, I'm going in deep this comic book world. And
that
then
is so
yeah,
funny.
but then I get to like page 4 or whatever, and it's like, okay, there's like some normal characters, they're people, they're just playing a game.
Yeah,
I
just
was like,
kids.
yeah, and I was like, thank God I can follow this. And then
Do you watch Stranger Things at all or no?
I watched like the first season, I want to
Okay,
say,
because I'm
yeah,
like, I feel like that it's the opening scene of that show or whatever, like them playing this D&D. That's really what that is. It's like
yeah,
they are their
yeah,
characters
for
and it's real to them at that moment, but it's in their voices.
No, for sure. And then I guess moving on, so then it got to the normal part, like character development and all this stuff. And so then here I'm looking at this from purely not a comic book perspective, but a literature perspective. Keep in mind, I have no comic book background.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it took a little while, like, maybe 1 or 2 chapters to kind of grasp hold of me, to get me hooked in to where, for 1 or 2 chapters, which I guess is completely understandable in the sense that, it takes time to, for a hook or, to get attached to the characters enough, what have you, to have you fully invested in the book. But, so I kind of pushed through, I would say, where I considered this kind of like a chore, or like I wasn't passionate about it for like 2 chapters. And
Yeah.
then I got kind of hooked in. Which, by the way, every chapter when it started with the stupid like orc warlock thing scared me a little bit. Where I was like, "Are they going off? Yeah. Is this it?"
It's so funny. I'm like, I agree because I just think it is overwhelming, but I'm also like because this isn't like standard, obviously, like Marvel or DC. This was an indie book, and I'm like, so I think. Because also, Jack, how intimidating would it be to like just hand you something like a Batman story that has 80 years of continuity behind it? You know what I mean? Like, I can't just do that either. So I'm like, wow, here's something where I feel like this book kind of really captured what it was like to be young and those interpersonal dynamics within a friendship like group. Like with that friend group, I'm like, because I feel like that was us and our 4 friends, not like so explicitly, but like I feel like some of those dynamics were just so real, and I'm like, ooh, that like nailed it for me when I was like a kid.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think you kind of picked the perfect book for me to do for my first one. So props to you on that. And you're right about the character development. I wrote down, like, I have some theories that, yeah, I think there's things that seem trivial in this book that the author or artist, I is an author for comic books.
Okay,
I
so
don't know.
there's both. There's a artist, and then a guy that does pencils, and then there's a guy that writes it. So they write out page for
Oh,
page what's going to happen, and potentially panel by panel depending on the creative process. But yeah. So the artist, but I think there's some. I don't know. The cool thing about indie books too is it kind of plays on the structure, and they can really kind of expand on it in a way that DC and Marvel can't quite. They have their mold.
sure. I mean, I don't know, but sure.
I'm like, I guess you know.
Yeah. Yeah, but so moral of the story, like, I guess the point I'm trying to make with the character development and some small things about this book, I think the guy who did the writing knew exactly what he was doing, and it was calculated, and that's the
Yeah,
difference and what makes him like a professional at what he does
yeah,
compared to, us like simpletons. But so it's so
yeah.
yeah.
And he's actually, what's crazy is he's written for Marvel and like big publishers because a lot of people in their journey will do indie books and then they'll come and do Marvel or DC and like potentially have like a residency at those two publishing houses because those are the major ones and there's job security there, la la. There's
Sure.
bigger, there's money there, but like I like this one because he has way more full autonomy in whatever he gets to write in whatever story direction. These are his original characters. He's not bogged down by history surrounding or legacy. It's like he gets to create all of that, and I think that's one of the strengths in a book like this. And that's why it's like it's also easier to introduce to someone. I'm like, this is the first time anyone's ever meeting them in all this context. You don't need to know anything other than what they're giving you.
Yeah, no, that helped me a lot for sure. That's kind of cool. I didn't know that, but so that's kind of a passion project on this guy's part, which was awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So had you ever heard of like indie comics before this?
Nope, not before this Zoom call.
No, right now. You're like, when's Batman show up?
Yeah.
um, oh, that's so funny. After reading this, did you have any idea of why I chose this book for you?
Um, well, I guess I understood that, like you said, it was a standalone book, so I didn't really
Yeah.
need to know anything before, which was huge. I did think about how like it's like a group of like 12-year-olds or whatever, and that's kind of like when we were just kicking it on our bikes, running around the
Yeah.
block.
Yeah.
Those thoughts did pass my mind, but other than that, no.
No, I was like, honestly, it just really reminded me of that, of when we were kids and kind of because I like that with these kids, they're not just like quaint little like Leave It to Beaver type characters. They're kind of
Hmm.
little shits. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I'm like, they are.
They're like Seal Beach pit crew kids.
Yeah. Oh, Jay called out. They're just. Well, you're not wrong, but it's just like it's just them being like I don't know, like the little girl Paige.
Yeah.
She's so volatile and aggressive, and I'm like, who hurt you? Why are you like
Yeah.
getting like called out? Like, why are you so aggro? And like, I don't know. And then I like the one kid, the African American kid. I forget all their names because it's been like a month since I read this. The
I
little
wrote it
one,
down.
I think
I
it's
wrote it down
Walter,
yeah, it's
who's so
Walt.
quiet, and he's like everything he says on the page is like a whisper. Like the font is 5 when everything else is 12.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like Paige is this fiercely independent. Yeah, I'd say that obviously the main character, fiercely independent, tough, and like she's, they totally, the artist or author totally captures like being a little kid in this time and
Yeah.
just like the whimsical innocence, but also just the absolute passion. So like the example I'd give is so then like can we get into the story or can I like
Yeah,
share
yeah,
details
just
with
go
it?
for it, dude. We
Okay,
do
so
full
like
spoilers too.
okay, so they're like, planning on like robbing the bank so the dad doesn't have to, essentially, which is
Yeah.
like this crazy thing. But it makes sense, I guess. But
It makes
then,
sense to them. It's like
yes,
there's no logic, but I'm like, as a kid,
yes, but so then they were like Walt and the tall kid, what's his name, Pat, or Stretch they call him, and
yeah.
Gertis, the foreign exchange kid that just is there.
That kid, it's like literally he just shows up in the car and he's like, I guess we're robbing a
Yeah.
bank today.
He's like, hello.
That's
Um,
it.
yeah.
Probably my favorite
But then,
character.
honestly, in his tracksuit. But so then Walt is talking to Paige, and he's essentially like, dude, like we can't do this. Like this is like big boy stuff. This is out of our reach. We're robbing a bank. We're talking about like going up to war against the police, real killers, Nazis, like all this stuff. Like
Yeah.
I think I'm out. And then Paige pulls out what was in that little tin box, and it was passports. And he's like, once they rob the bank, we're leaving. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, so we won't get to hang out anymore? All right, I'll go up against the killers. It's like kind of
Yeah.
like it's kind of like me, you versus the world type
Like,
deal.
isn't it, you know, I think they also like with all of that and with some of the parts in this book, there's like suspense. There's amount of like suspense, suspended belief. You know what I mean? You have to like just give a little like, yeah, these kids are going to try to rob this bank, but I felt like with that, like, okay, like little allowing some disbelievable things to happen, we really were able to see some of these kids like they also added stakes to there were stakes with these characters that I really
Hmm.
just liked. Like because that I realized that's something I like love in my storytelling is like, okay, like what like frankly, just to go into it, Burger's death. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm frankly like obviously not pro death, but I'm like, I'm kinda glad someone died. Like,
Okay.
because I'm like, oh wow, yeah, that's what happens when you try to rob a bank. And like I really like how that kind of tied into the relationship of Paige and her uncle.
Yeah.
And there's that quote I wrote it down. It says, "I can't protect you anymore, Paige," and she said, "You never could." And it's just like, ooh, like this is like, wow, that just like punches you in the gut. It got way more brutal than D&D.
Yeah. No, for sure. That was towards the end when you get to those points, they're like legitimately heart wrenching. Where I remember reading this, like I was like, like I was expecting like a happy ending. Like I was like, what is going on? Like, and I was like, my mind was kind of blown finishing up this book. But then, my argument for that with the Burger thing, who, by the way, Burger is my favorite character by
He's
far.
so good.
just stay hot, King. Legend. But you said stakes. So I think there's an absolute reason that Burger was the one that got shot, because throughout the whole book, there were no stakes for Burger. He didn't understand. He was just living life. So what he represented,
nobody wanted him around either.
Yeah, what he represented was just the whimsical innocence, and you can get annoyed with that, but also you love it, and that's kind of what you want to protect. That childhood innocence that gets lost when you become an adult. That's literally what he was. It's this crazy thing. I actually wrote down. So the Burger. So you remember there was the stakeout at the candy store, and then he shows up and he's like, "Thanks for inviting me," and they're like, "We didn't invite you." And then it goes through like all these like boxes. I wrote down. He said, so just going through his thoughts, like during like a stakeout, like what should be like a high intensity deal. He goes, "I think I smell weird today. Anyone agree?" And then he goes next box. "Gum is weird. It's food you can't eat." And then my cat coughed up the gnarliest thing. I'd imagine myself being Paige, like going like, "This mother fricker." Like I'm on a stakeout. And they're like, "Shut up, Burger." And he goes, "Worst stakeout ever. Why'd you guys even invite me?" And they're like, "We didn't."
but then they're like, "How much time has gone by?" It's like 5 minutes. It's like, we had no chance.
Yeah. And then he goes, one of them was, I think it was pretty funny. It was like, I think it was Mrs. Jorgensen or something. He's like, "I think she'd kiss me back if I made a move, like if I just took initiative." And then later in the book, when they spray the truth serum on him, and he talks about the same woman, he goes, "I ate a tuna sandwich I found in the parking lot. Then I snuck into the girl's bathroom to look at Mrs. Jorgensen in her underwear." And you can tell, so from chapter 1 to chapter 4, he's just been thinking about Mrs. Jorgensen.
Where's that story? Oh my gosh. He's so funny. Oh, but he's a great character too, because it makes me think, especially with how he died, and I guess going back to talking about stakes within this story, is that there's two levels to it. When he died, it was really kind of from Paige's uncle and his partner's perspective. He's like, "I need to stop my niece from doing this dumbass thing," and then Burger tries to help them get away by jumping on the back, because he's like, "I want my friends to get away. I want my friends to get away," but pretty much by the time they entered the bank, we knew nothing was good. It was not going to go well.
Yeah. And by the way, just one quick sign on that. What I noticed was they were in way over their head. Was things were going wrong, and then they were like, "How much money do we have?" Like $9,300. And I remember thinking Paige is going to be pissed. Then Paige is like, "Yes, that's so much money." I was like, that's not going to help you pay off the house,
Yeah, literally like that. And they're going to be like, "Wow, automatically $9,300 is enough." But with the stakes, exactly, and you have the logical thought process in the mind of the kids, and then the logical thought process in the mind of the uncle, where it's the kid's like, "Oh, we're totally going to get away with this," and then Burger frankly kind of sacrifices himself by jumping on the back of the cop. And Burger's like, "I'm helping," in his mind. But then the cop is like, "Why is this kid on me? Get off me, kid. Stop. Oh my gosh, you're being annoying." And then he had the gun in his hand, but then it was an accident. He accidentally shot Burger. And it's like,
is that okay?
What?
I don't know. That was a debate in my mind. Was it an accident? Because I actually looked at the guys. So it was the uncle's partner. I was looking at it his face when he was saying this, and he was saying "Oh no, it was an accident. He was reaching for my gun, but I never saw anything to show that he was reaching for the gun." It was kind of almost like a play on the political times now, where it's did he just shoot him out of frustration, kind of type of a deal, because he could get away with it?
Yeah, I have a little more optimism than you. But I don't think he did. I just think of when you have especially a chubby kid like him, when you have a chubby kid on you, you're like, ah. And so it was just wow. And nobody there wanted that to happen, but that kind of really just added some gravity to the whole thing, which I really liked.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then at the same time, it's the innocence still, because his big invention there was to tie cinder blocks to his feet so he could reach the gas pedals. So he's so stoked on that. So he's still this kid when he jumps on the uncle's or the uncle's partner, the cop, like there's no way he's thinking I could get shot here. Like I'm
Yeah.
assaulting a police officer. Like he was
Yeah.
just, living in the moment, and
Exactly.
then,
He's like, I'm helping my friends.
yeah. And that's kind of when the book started to take a turn for just the cold hard truths, that they, inevitably show at the end.
Yeah. And how did you feel about, I guess, and the next question is like, what was your favorite moment? Because we kind of went over our favorite characters, but in this story, did you have a favorite moment?
Mm. So, so as far as like just chuckling and enjoying, by the way, so even like the tone of the book was kind of cool, where
Yeah.
like the overall author would like make side points and they were like very sarcastic and clever and stuff. I was like, oh, this guy's like funny, he's smart.
No.
And so then I enjoyed just all the little moments, like especially with Burger. My favorite moment would have just to be the last page, like because it was legitimately, completely out of left field for me. I had no idea it was coming. I don't know why. Maybe it's like the cartoons and like the pictures,
Yeah.
but I was, if I was a betting man, like 100 to 1, it's like a happy ending, like they do it, or something. And not only was it like a sad ending, it was heartbreaking. Like it plays on this emotion, this relationship that everyone has, between their, the kid and their parent and trying to protect each other and it going wrong and just this lack of communication that led to everything. And, it was just like, it was emotional. And I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. And like, that's how you kind of can really tell. Like, that's what I read this book once. This is my second time reading it. And I was like, it's kind of incredibly disarming. But again, I think that's what kind of adds some power to the storytelling is because we were able to see these, like, it wasn't a happy ending. Like, someone did die, and, like, there are ramifications for what you just tried to do. And I'm like, I don't know if it's anyone's fault, frankly. Well, if anything, it's Paige's fault. But, like, the dad is stuck between a rock and a hard place. And he's like, I want to be able to provide for my family. Like, yo, Paige, I don't know if you know, we're poor. And Paige's like, I can help. And it's like, oh, no. And how honest he was to his daughter about, I think I'm going to go try and rob a bank. It was fascinating.
Yeah, fascinating. And that opens up and kind of shows the real relationship that's genuine that they have. And yeah, disarming, I would say, is the perfect word because the lines are blurred between good and bad, right? Because like, robbing the bank, but he's doing it for a good cause. Paige putting her friends at risk, but she thinks she's helping, and it just, and it just kind of shows that all these good intentions, no matter, about how pure they are, it led to just this heartbreaking event, know?
Yeah. It's also too, though, like, I think it's kind of glaring in your face too. It's like when you theorize what would happen, it's like also, what else did you think was going to happen? You know what I mean? Like, did you think, like, did you really think, some 10-year-olds could come in and just rob the bank and have it all work out?
Yeah. And I think that's so like the two, Pat and Walt, the two normal kids, I think they represent like just normal kids. Like they're, they're just kids. They're not, they have the jocks, they're just normal. Burger represents, like we said, the whimsical, just like carefree childhood innocence that's just kind of awesome.
Yeah.
And then Paige represents what a lot of kids, I think, want to be when they're faced with their everyday issues in life. No matter how small, they wish they were like this. Paige is kind of a superhero kid in the sense that she's, running around planning these bank robberies, all this stuff. But I think the play on it is just actually brutally accurate in the sense that if these kids that are thinking these things and want to take matters into their own hands, no matter how uncool or just unjustified or just, the opposite of what you think would happen in the story, what that is, no matter that, it's that even if they try to help and plan it out perfectly, they are kids and their hands are tied to a certain extent. And it's better if they just keep being kids,
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I totally agree. And I guess, when I think about stories and like, especially comics like this, I think about how well they told the story that they set off to tell. Oh, okay, cool.
Sorry, drop my earthquake.
And I think this one like told their story excellent. Except, I thought the ending was kind of abrupt. How did you feel about like the pacing within this story?
The ending was definitely abrupt. So the pacing was good up until the end. I don't know if
Yeah.
that was on purpose or not, but yeah. So like, keep in mind, like a small part we haven't talked about is when Paige would like go to bed every night and like there'd be like the radio and they'd talk to that like random trucker dude who really
Oh
like
my
didn't,
gosh.
yeah, who was just this freak, right?
The hobo
um,
who like got them a gun, but like wasn't quite a gun.
yeah, it was a flare gun, and
Yeah.
he's like, "You want meth?" And Paige is like, "I'm 12." um, yeah. So so I feel like it was pretty okay towards the end, or like it made sense, or before the end, I should say. And then at the end, yeah, it happened so fast, and all of a sudden, the dad's old, Walt and whatever his name is, Pat, are full blown adults, and they're waiting outside the jail. And then that's how they tell you that Berger died, right? I remember going back to the page. It's like, wait, it doesn't
You like
say
want to
anything.
know, yeah.
Yeah, I remember it doesn't say
And
anything.
then
And I
they
look,
get like caught or rescued or whatever by the police when they tried to jump the quarry or whatever. And it's like they they were all able to get out. And I'm like, do we know what happened? And then it's like, ooh,
yeah, yeah, and that shows just also just like once again running from the issues like Berger. Like if you just stayed and like got Berger attention, like not only is he shot now in the stomach, he's now in a van that's sinking in a lake. Like you idiots.
yeah, yeah,
um, so yeah, that happened fast, and that was honestly that scene right there where the very last scene where she hugged her dad, and there was no lack of love or good intentions, but she clearly spent like 20 years in prison,
yeah,
and these lives are like horribly altered, and then they hugged and they just said, "I'm sorry." That was one of the more powerful pieces I've ever read.
yeah.
So throw that in with like where the red fern grows in fifth
Oh
grade,
yeah.
where the teachers are crying.
I'm like, I've seen Outsiders. Like,
Yeah,
yeah. And I think I'm very I'm grateful, obviously, because like I think comics have this capacity to this medium in itself has the capacity to really like tell powerful stories, and I think that again, this is one of those stories that like I wanted you to be surprised. I want every newcomer because you're not the first person I've had who's never read a comic before. Like I want every newcomer to come in like be caught off guard by the potential of this medium and how they can tell stories because I think that you know again like I don't know if you thought this before, but like people think comic books are for kids, and I'm like, this book was not for children. This was almost, Tarantino esque in
yeah,
how situation, and I think that the way the tone was conveyed, I'm like, because you could have the whimsical childhood stuff, and then you could have the very real harsh world where there are Nazis, there are guns.
yeah. It's a story for adults or young adults that taps into their own childhoods because it makes you think about it, and that's kind of the idea, I think, and that's kind of a beautiful thing because um, for example, like my buddy sent me a picture from college. Is like on this day, it was like social media like memories like 6 years ago, and I was like, holy cannoli, now we're all like working, or we've all got these
World.
adult lives, and yeah, and they just snowballs, and the world just keeps going on, and you kind of think back, and I think back to me and you, it was like a Hell Week practice, and together we had $5 for lunch, and so
Oh my gosh,
we decided to buy 20 cookies from Subway
they were
and just
so good.
perished.
That
It's like little things like that that just don't really happen anymore, and there's nothing wrong with
hey,
that.
I got $20 or I got $5 for cookies.
All right, I'll see you there after this. But yeah, it's like there's nothing wrong with that. It's just what that is childhood, and it's kind of this beautiful thing to think back on, in my opinion. And this book totally captured that, where so we've talked about this like horrible ending, this crazy emotional thing, but then as you're reading it, you kind of look back on your own childhood with a smile, like, yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good memories. Yeah, that's the way I think about it. I guess we're gonna be winding down. So I don't know if I mentioned. I said my favorite character is the foreign exchange student. I think my favorite character, and I think I love the relationship with the dad. I think Paige's dad was, if it's not Burger, it's the dad, because I think that you got to see how torn he was between, he knew what to do. He knew what the right thing to do was, but he was going against that to try and save his family because he was stuck. He's just stuck. He's like, I want to be able to provide for my daughter. You know what I mean? And these guys, unfortunately, can give me a way out. And so,
Yeah. Yeah, he was kind of a question mark for me. He's clearly like a war-torn character. His wife died. He didn't really share that much about him. He knows all these crazy people that were the enemies, the Nazis and stuff. But he was clearly good, troubled but good. So, I did like him, but I wish I kind of knew more about him, I guess.
Yeah. I would have loved to explore that character more because he was just very torn. I think you're right. Okay, well, I guess I got like 2 more questions for you. Number 1, would you recommend this book to another person?
Yes, 100%. I would phrase it in the sense that I know it's weird because it's a comic book, but that's what I thought, and I liked it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Do you think you'd pick up another comic book after this?
I was thinking that about that, right after I finished this. And it's almost like sales where it's like the power to like get someone to move to action, right?
Yeah.
And because I thought like I really did enjoy this, and I know that I would enjoy another one. So like my honest answer is I don't know. I don't know if I will, because like I'm busy, and just crap happens, but I really hope so. Because I did enjoy it.
All right. Well, I'm like, message received. I'm not recommending you any more books anytime soon.
No.
But I'll get you on. I actually think I'm looking at another book for you right now that I think could be really fun to go over with you. So TBD on that. And then I guess my last question for you, Jack, is what would you rate this story out of 10?
10 being the best book I've ever read, or the best book of all time?
No, neither. Just calm down.
Oh.
I just think when we think about stories that they set off to tell, do they tell it well? Because I wouldn't, let's not compare this to The Godfather. You know what I mean? Or like, things like that.
Yeah.
Like, was this, it's kind of like pizza. Like, yeah, maybe it was the best pizza you've ever had or whatever. Like, but it doesn't need to be. Did this pizza do the pizza job well? I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying.
You're talking about Barstool, Dave Portnoy's pizza reviews.
I'm like, his are a little weird, but I'm like, my scale's always skewed. You can use decimal systems, but did you like it that much? Did you like it to a 10 level? Because I've given it multiple 10s on the show.
Okay, so no, I'm going to give it an 8.8, and I'll tell you why. And that's, by the way, that's a really good score. 10. Like,
I think so.
I don't want to give anything a 10. That's my first time because I have nothing to compare it to. So that's an unbelievable score because of the 2 aspects that are. It was really cool, and like the whimsical part that was just fun and enjoyable to read. And it was just like like a cool little story. But then it also, like I said, everything was, I almost feel like we've done a disservice because I feel like I haven't explained well enough how calculated this guy was with everything and what the characters represented, the underlying themes. Like, it really was like kind of like, if you brought this to like a English professor, they could really analyze it and be like, there's a lot of stuff going on. I feel passionate about that.
That's we will get you into more books because I don't know. This is great, and I thought it was very calculated as well. But I think that I think I have some books that they'll be a doozy for you.
All right, they'll blow my top off.
Oh my gosh! For my listeners, I'm talking about Brian K. Vaughan's Saga, or Why the Last Man, or others. So.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's my biased perspective that this is the only one I've had. So
yeah, I'm like, you don't know anything. Just kidding.
Hang up, you idiot.
Like you first.
Oh man! But
so there's your 8.8.
Yeah, moral of the story, really, really good. And I'm really glad I did this. So thank you for that. Actually,
no worries. My score on this, I think, is going to be. I think I'm going to do an 8.5, which is, I think, I don't know. 8.5 is good. I'm okay with 8.5 because I think that I honestly, the ending knocked it down a couple pegs for me because I just really would have liked to have taken more time because for those that have read it or for those that haven't, I'm like, we're talking about the death of Berger and then her getting out of jail. That takes place basically within the span of 2 pages. And I'm like, literally 2 more pages could have really helped me out. But, I thought that was really good. I really, 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 really loved the imagination that went into this book because there were stakes, but it was also human, and I think it captured being a child so well, like better than so many texts. There's other books that I compare it to in my head that capture it just that well, but also some books miss it. It didn't feel like frankly, it felt like an adult being honest about their childhood that we read about. You know what I mean?
I agree.
These aren't the kind of kids that I'd want to. These are the kind of stories and stuff that I'd want to tell my mom that I had with my friends when I was 12. You know what I mean? I'm just like cursing and being edgy or like punching bullies or punching Nazis. I'm like, that's not quite what I would have done when I was a kid. So that being portrayed despite, I think the unlikability of the characters is actually what made them incredibly likable because it was honest.
Yeah. It was honest, and because it was honest, it was also like, which one were you? Or right. Like our buddy Nick Burns.
Yeah,
if he ain't Paige, I don't know.
The best quote I heard describing Nick Burns is that he was 40 when he was 10. I'm like, he is Paige, and I'm like,
but like, let's think it like, so Nick, just I guess for the people listening for a little background, is he is the guy that is like, if you paddle out with him while surfing, like he'll bark at you, like he'll let you know, like he is that guy that's gonna like bark, and put people in their place. But then when you get down to it, he's like the sweetest guy at the core, like such a nice dude.
It's like you love the guy. Like,
and good intentions, like great intentions in everything he does. He's just a tough cookie.
And he's so calculated. Like, I think that that's what I lean more towards with Paige. I'm like, I think you're right. Nick is a temper or whatever, but like obviously we love him no matter what. But I think going to the calculation of Paige and the patience that she has in going with everything, I'm like, that's Nick Burns. I totally agree.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm not going to let you F over me and my friends. Like, I will fight, and he turns around and hugs his buddies. It's just awesome.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Okay, so there's my 8.5. Now, for the listeners, please go follow Cameron Reads Comics on Instagram. We actually have a brand new Twitter at Cameron Reads Com. They wouldn't let me put it into ICS. So we have a brand new Twitter account. We also have a bonus episode coming out this Saturday. Is the first Cameron Reads Comics annual. That is going to be for the Disney Marvel slate updates. Me and my friend Jesse just recorded, and we are going to talk about all of the updates that they gave us recently, and it was overwhelming. So CRC annual number 1 is coming out this Saturday. And really cool news, next Wednesday I am having on my favorite YouTuber, Gem Mint Collectibles. So you do not want to miss this. It is going to be so awesome. I am so excited. All of these things are a dream come true. So stay tuned. Leave me a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. And Jack, thank you so much for coming. We are going to have you back on for I have a book. I'm not going to tell my friends that. I'm like, if you want to read a comic, just ask. So.
Oh, heck yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah. And my one request, I guess, would be the next book, because I'm all in now. So the moving to action, if you just push me a little bit, let's go. Yeah. And so if we could ramp up just like a bit, like next one, I don't know what ramping up is, but I think you do, but like, yeah. So
I'm like, I'm like, Jack wants full trolls this time. He's like, no
shoots and ladders, please.
Anyways, thanks, Jack, so much. We will see you later.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.